Welcome to Conversations for Curious Travelers, a Trip Scholars podcast. I'm your host, Erica Forrest. In each episode, we explore how travel helps us learn more about the world and ourselves. If you travel, not just to escape, but to grow, connect, and understand, you are in the right place. Welcome back to Conversations for Curious Travelers. Today, I am excited to welcome Tracy Smyth to the show. Tracy is the chief enthusiast behind Travel Bug Tonic and a certified travel coach, specializing in intentional travel that stretches perspectives and boosts well-being. She fuses her insatiable curiosity, well-being research background, and deep passion for adventure into crafting joyful journeys and awe-inspiring experiences. Tracy empowers and nudges women out of their comfort zone into meaningful adventures, solo or with others, believing that travel is a powerful catalyst for self-discovery, creative inspiration, and designing a life filled with wonder. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That intro makes me want to go travel.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, I am especially excited to have you here because I so admire what you do and the way that you see the world and think about travel. And then, in addition to being a fellow travel coach, we're also friends and we've gotten to meet up in person. I know we both live in a part of the world sometimes called Cascadia, but it's British Columbia in Canada and the Pacific Northwest in the United States. And the natural beauty here is just so extraordinary. And I know that we have both been deeply inspired by it and that we both include this focus on nature in our coaching. So I love all those overlaps.
I do too. And I enjoyed meeting you. That was a couple of years ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it was really wonderful. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got started traveling and then how that led into what you do now with Travel Bug Tonic.
Sure. Well, my dad was in the military, so I was one of those kids who moved every 2 or 3 years of my life growing up. So childhood all the way into early adulthood, I was moving a lot. We didn't actually go on a lot of travels or trips, I guess, or vacations as a family, but we were always either moving somewhere new, exploring this new place, or leaving. And I really believe, looking back, that all those experiences kind of either flipped a switch in my DNA or something that really helped me appreciate from a very early age newness, like novelty, new experiences, meeting new people, being exposed to new cultures, trying new foods, like all those things. That sense of appreciation for new really has stuck, and I believe that has transformed over my life into a passion for travel as well. But I'm a pretty normal person. I live in small town Canada. I have two now grown sons who are incredible. Our lives were busy. My husband had a career, I had a career, so I'm pretty normal. And it wasn't, and we tried to travel as much as we could here and there, but life happens. And it was when I was when I turned 50, actually, a lot of women or a lot of people, like, that's kind of a milestone where you go, okay, what's this next chapter going to look like? Yes. And for me, that happened to land right during the pandemic. Yeah. Like a lot of other people, the pandemic also kind of shifted people's lives. So here I was going, okay, what's going to be my next chapter? And I was always sure that travel was going to play a role. And then there I couldn't. So what that did for me was help to focus me in terms of, so what am I going to do about it? Why do I want to do this so much?
Yeah.
And what does the research say? So I turned to research and writing and the whys behind why I wanted to travel and what I could do about it and how that was affecting my well-being. So Travel Bug Tonic ended up being my blank page, I guess, or my space in which that I could share what I was learning about myself.
I know a lot of us have learned from what you've shared at Travel Bug Tonic. And I appreciate so much that you do go into the research and like the cognitive science behind it. And what does the research say,
Mhm.
both about travel and about well-being and about happiness, about connection. And then you have found all of these compelling ways to share it with all of the rest of us.
Well,
So, but before we get into that, I would love to hear a little bit more about when you took that first solo trip.
so
Uh, yeah.
right. So that was during that time I was trying to uncover what was making me tick. And I was kind of leaning into a lot of my curiosity about travel. And solo travel came up as well. So here I was, a
Okay.
50-year-old woman, and looking at solo travel. It never really even crossed my radar, except I had a few friends, I guess, who had done some solo travel. But I got curious and I was overwhelmed by the benefits that either people's experiences or what the research was kind of suggesting, the reasons why solo travel can really support people's well-being or personal development. So even though I couldn't go anywhere because we weren't going anywhere in the pandemic, I designed my own first solo journey. And it also happened that I was doing my travel coaching certification at the time. So I kind of coached myself,
Ah, smart.
put myself through the process to design a journey that was really very personal to me, to
Yeah.
explore this area of being on my own, but also traveling without being too far from home. And so I designed a 4-day, 80-kilometer in hike, no, on Vancouver Island. Vancouver
Oh,
Island does
wow.
not have the infrastructure for like a Camino or another long
No,
hike.
no,
So
it's
I
wilderness.
yeah. So I found a wonderful trail, and I used Airbnb maps and like zoomed in to see like could I find a bed, because I didn't want to camp. Find a bed that I could sleep in that wasn't too far from the trail. And so I designed it myself and I did it, and it was such a great experience. I ended it going, I'd like to do this again. So I made a commitment to myself that every year I was going to do a little solo traveling. It's going to look a little different, just to explore, like, I don't know, who I am as a traveler and what I like.
Oh, what a brilliant solution to finding a way to do that solo travel in the midst of the pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
How did you backpack or did you have somebody help transport your goods?
I backpacked,
Oh, you
but
did.
because I wasn't cooking or anything, I didn't have too much to carry. Like one Airbnb I ordered in. I
That was
ordered.
smart. Right, when we were having food delivered to the doorstep and not
That's
even
right.
thanking the person directly. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
What a very clever solution. Vancouver Island, for any of our listeners who aren't familiar with it, is just a place of exceptional natural beauty, but it is also parts of it are quite rugged and there's a lot of wildlife and everything. What was that like for you to walk through that on your own?
Well, interestingly enough, that part is in my comfort zone because I spend a
Okay.
lot of time, because I live here, a lot of time in forests, just outside my house. I saw a cougar the other day and I've seen
Oh,
bears
wow.
and, that
Wow.
kind of thing. So that part was in my comfort zone. It was actually going into the city. When I met you, that was my second solo trip to Seattle. That was out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the wilderness was really good. But I mean, I also have some skills in terms of awareness, and I know what to do. And people knew where I was.
Yeah.
I was approached it in a very safe way.
So you were moving into that space with like the intention of being alone in nature, which you probably, thinking about where you live, you probably have an opportunity to do that in shorter ways. What was it like to do that for 4 days, just with your mind and yourself in nature like that?
I, and it was incredible, and it was one of the things that I was curious about, like would I solve all the world's problems being alone and quiet with my, and I didn't actually. And I decided I didn't want to listen to music or an audiobook or anything like that. I had
Yeah.
those just in case, but I didn't want to. And what I discovered, and I could never have anticipated this, was that it actually became very meditative, and I just got quiet, and my skills of noticing and observations, which are pretty decent, became amplified so much more in the quiet and the pace and the rhythm of my walking. Yeah, so that was one of the things that I took away and really appreciate so much, to know that I can do that.
Yeah, so you were noticing the patterns of thought in your mind and really being cognizant of both. I mean, in the rainforest like that, the tiny moss and the
Yeah.
little insects that can survive on the moss, all the way to the grandeur of those trees and the vistas that we get to experience. You had all of that happening,
Yes,
all
yeah.
that happening at once.
And another things that I noticed was, I thought, well, it's Vancouver Island, the forests are the same or whatever. But I really noticed the subtle changes, even, across, say, I walked 20 kilometers one day. I noticed subtle changes in the environment, which maybe I wouldn't have in the same way, in a group chatting
Yeah.
or on a smaller hike. So I really appreciate it. It was in March. And so spring was
Oh,
just kind of starting to think about
emerging.
coming.
Yeah, peeking out here and there.
Yeah,
You must have had a fair amount of rain,
there was a bit of rain.
but you're used to
Yeah, I'm not made of sugar.
that. And do you feel like there were some fears that you were moving through, or do you feel like it was more of kind of settling into yourself, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a the two kind of fears that I faced, I guess, or maneuvered. One was actually pre-trip. It was that last minute doubting of, I can't do this. Like,
Uh-huh.
it's actually going to be too hard, that kind of thing. So that process and going through that, and some of the problem solving that I ended up doing to kind of make sure that I felt okay to do it, I did.
Yeah.
And then there was one moment, it was actually just leaving an area where there were houses, not too far, and I heard a funny noise. This is a very embarrassing story, but I'll tell it anyway. So I was walking. It was very early morning, and very kind of foggy. Walking along, and just leaving an area where there was houses, and I heard a noise, and it could have been a bear, it could have been a dog, it could have been a person. So my anxiety definitely rose a bit, and I whipped around, and I didn't see anything. And so I came back and I kept walking, and I heard it again. And I whipped around again and looked around. And then I suddenly, after probably 3 or 4 times doing that, I realized it was my ponytail on the inside of my hood that was swishing. So I had a huge big laugh at myself. And it was a perfect, like, okay, Tracy, you got this.
Yep, yep. I mean, your instincts were spot on. That is
Yeah.
what they're for. We have that whole fight or flight precisely to be able
Absolutely.
to, get out of the way of a bear or a cougar. But
Yeah.
that so much of, what we are concerned about is in our own control, like our ponytail.
That's right.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so now you have gotten to take a few more of these solo trips. I bet you keep uncovering things about yourself and your understanding of the world with each one.
I do. I do. And my husband is my favorite person to travel with. And so I solo travel ended up being another way of traveling that
Yep.
kind of opened up the world a little bit differently. I could be able to see different than when I was with him or with a friend or something like that. And so it's a compliment. It's part of the array of ways that I enjoy experiencing the world. Second solo trip was to a city. Then I did some house sitting on an island. And then I went to France. So I've kind of slowly experimented in different ways where my comfort zone is and where I want to stay, and then where I want to push it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, that's a wide array of ways to do solo travel. And
Yes,
knowing you, I'm sure that you're very thoughtful about what you're hoping to get out of each of those different kinds of travel. And then that you bring it back to your life and, when you travel with your family or travel with your husband or friends. So
exactly.
that's all wonderful. Would you share a little bit about what your background was before you became a travel coach and that interesting work that you were doing before?
Sure. Well, I will try to. It's yeah, my career was very varied and very rich, and would take a whole podcast to dissect all the different things that I did. But the essence of it was working with the research around human development and well-being and brain science, and kind of translating that into ways that either communities or cities or individuals could actually use that information to make change. And so that was very much in areas of community development, project management, that kind of thing. But it was a
Yeah.
whole process of using academic research and positive psychology and brain science to, okay, so what are we going to do about it? So
Yeah.
I,
Taking
that,
it out
yeah.
of the ivory tower and having it become really applicable to people's lives.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And combining things and synthesizing multiple sources so that it actually makes sense. Because sometimes academia can be so narrow
Mhm.
in terms of, what they're studying, but taken in a wider context, how can that be then more actioned?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and thankfully they are narrow so they can go deep into it, but it is taking somebody like you to be able to bring it all together and see how can all of those tools be applied and all of that research be applied to a particular person or a particular community. And I think that whole space is one of the most exciting frontiers that we're at right now as human beings, and that it holds so much promise. And I just love that you are taking that and moving it into this space about travel. And so, can you talk a little bit about, with that rich background that you have, why travel? Why is that where you want to share your expertise?
Well, I think partly because I was in that space in the pandemic going, I want to travel and I can. But I knew that's a big part of who I am. And I personally really strongly believed that there's a connection between travel and well-being.
Mhm.
And I wanted to both learn about it from whatever anyone else was studying, but also experience it and experiment with it,
Yeah.
to validate my beliefs, I guess, that both travel can be a tool to improve our well-being, but I also believe that when we pay attention to our well-being, we can also improve our travels as well. So it's kind of like they go hand in hand both
Mhm.
ways,
Mhm.
which is really powerful.
Yeah, yeah, very
Mhm.
powerful. So I know one of the things you have talked about is this idea of travel experiments. I was
Mhm.
wondering if you could share a little bit with us about what you think about with travel experiments and how our listeners might be able to try one for themselves.
Sure, of course. So I kind of repel at the idea of being an expert at anything. I'm more of a scientist. And so the whole idea of experimenting, it really suits me. And so I like to experiment with different ways to travel. So a lot of times people think about travel as going to a place, and that destination is kind of like the end story, I guess. But
Yeah.
to me, it's the whole journey, it's the whole package. And I know it's the same for you. And we also come to adulthood or any time with our own narratives about what we think we should do or what we think we want to do even.
Yeah.
But how do we know until we
Yeah.
try it out?
Yeah.
So that's how I approach travel, is like, I haven't done that before. I wonder what part of that kind of traveling would suit me. And the kinds of things that I'm talking about is staying longer in one place.
Ah,
So previously I was kind of like, let's
yeah,
keep
the
going.
book's
This is
itinerary.
that's right.
Yes.
This is,
There's
and I was
so
like,
much to see.
and,
Yes.
and there is something for that, and that works for a lot of people. But I wanted to challenge myself,
Mhm.
and there's probably some benefits. I read about some of the benefits of slowing down and experiencing things differently. What if we stayed one whole month in one city and then another whole month in a second city, and what would that look like, and how
Yeah.
what would we learn from that? And so that was another experiment that we did. Other ways are home exchange. So
Yeah.
we have this narrative of staying in hotels or staying in air, like we have these ways that people just travel. Home exchange is a whole other opportunity, of which I wasn't sure. My husband and I were not sure if that was going to be our jam.
Right.
And so we
Right. You're in
tentatively
someone's whole
practiced.
space.
Yeah,
Very personal
exactly.
space.
That's right.
right?
And then people come to our home. We don't have a second home, so they
Uh-huh.
would come to our home. And so it was tentative at first, but oh man, we are into it. It's not for everybody, but it's absolutely for us. So that was another kind of way to travel. How could you do it differently? Or
Yeah.
another example is up until last year, I had never been on a group
A
tour.
group.
No, I'd never been on one, except I think when I was in high school. And I went on one last year, and it was, I kind of picked and chose carefully. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And there was things that I took away. It was a women's only expedition in the mountains of Morocco. It kind
Mm,
of was really very much what I was about. And it was a
yeah.
place that I didn't want to go all by myself.
Yeah.
It worked really well. So that was another experiment.
I think that's such a wonderful way to approach it. An experiment means, you're not tied to something. You don't have to hold fast completely to it. You're exploring. You're giving yourself that space to be open to new experiences. And all of the experiments that you just shared with us are like a manageable choice somebody could make for a particular trip. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I really appreciate how you were talking about how, we have all of these external expectations of who we are or ideas about who we are because, we've been conditioned in the
Mhm.
culture in the space that we're in, and how by putting yourself in these situations, you get to experiment and explore who you are outside of those definitions and kind of be reflective at this meta level about who you are and how you want to move forward.
And how I am in the world. And to me, that's what travel is all about. It's such a learning environment
Yeah,
completely. And so you put yourselves in different classrooms, I guess, in different ways.
that's a great way to think about it. Yes, exactly. That each trip or travel experience is like a different classroom,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have to necessarily be uncomfortable to be getting something out of it.
Absolutely not. No, and that is a thing that, as you know, as a travel coach, is helping people realize that they don't have to totally jump out of their comfort zone
Yeah,
to get things out of a wonderful trip. And there's different ways that you can do things differently or challenge yourself without doing it all. Like I'm not a jump off the end of the dock into the deep water kind of
right,
person.
right.
There's different ways you can tailor and personalize travel so that it does suit you. And there are also people who need an escape from their regular routine and they're not looking for personal development. So people travel for so many different reasons, and that's really the beauty of it too.
Yeah, I think that's always important to bring up that there are times in life when we might be traveling to escape. It doesn't mean that that is a bad choice or anything at all like that. And I know you have a focus on especially serving women in the second half of their lives, people who are becoming empty nesters or are empty nesters. How do you help people in this space find the kind of travel experiments that might be good for them?
Yeah, that has turned out to be the group that I tend to work with, mostly
Yeah.
because I am just kind of out there with experimenting on myself. And I am a middle-aged woman that is an empty nester. So that seems to have fit. But I think how I help is one is just putting it out there and people can pick and choose from my experiences, and learn indirectly, I guess, through my stories or my resources and that kind of thing. The other way I think that I help is this attitude that change and these kinds of transitions are an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to be able to, you know, pay attention and be more intentional
Mhm.
about what it is that we want next rather than having life happen to us. It's like get back into the driver's seat after years of serving others, whether it's in a career or in family or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just an opportunity to not reject or repel or anything of those roles, but it's more enhance it because there's a new chapter that is presented to you with retirement or with empty nesting.
Yeah, yeah. I have found so when I do travel coaching, sometimes if I'm just doing, single sessions of coaching, it's helping people with a particular trip. But the long-term coaching so often seems to be people who are at these moments of
Mm.
transition. And so those of us who are empty nesters or young adults or people moving through a major shift in life like grief or divorce or even, young new relationships, to have
Mhm.
that opportunity to step out away from the confines of our these external forces that kind of help define who we are and emerge as who we are on our own. So I love that you work with empty nesters and women, because so many people at the age we're at right now, for decades, so much of how we joyfully embraced the meaning in our lives and how we wanted to define ourselves was caring for our kids or taking care of others, nurturing a family, having family trips where you're really focused on, meeting the needs of everybody in the family.
Mhm.
And now we're recreating, redefining who are we now. And it's such a great opportunity to leave our day-to-day routine and really step into what feels good right now for me.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not selfish. It's
No.
like it's just another opportunity. We also live in, a crazy world right now. And if this world was an airplane, the oxygen mask would be dropping. And we know that the first thing you do is put the oxygen mask on yourself and help to improve your own well-being so that you
Yes.
can, show up in ways to help other people.
I completely agree with you. And I think one of the things that kind of gets lost in translation sometimes when people are talking about working with a coach or having a trip where you're setting intentions is that it is kind of a selfish experience. And, is it self-indulgent to be so focused on myself? And I have found over and over that it is often by grounding ourselves and, really stepping outside of the day-to-day responsibilities and paying attention to who am I? What do I want to do with this brief opportunity to experience life that I'm having with other people? To get to that point brings us back into the world with such great intention and motivation, and usually like a desire to make a difference. Do you find that in your coaching, it's not just inward looking, it becomes something beyond that?
Absolutely beyond that. And yes, I have experienced that as well as with myself, but it isn't without that struggle, the
Yep.
struggle with the guilt struggle of,
Hmm.
because that's the narrative that it is selfish.
Hmm.
And so getting through that struggle also is a good journey as well. And to be able to come out the other side and then experience that, yes, I'm recharged. I'm clearer. I have the energy to show up for whoever needs me as well, or
Yep.
be creative, or come back and create something beautiful like that. That's another way that it comes through as well. It's not always, caring for others. It's just
Right.
giving back to the world somehow.
Yes, yeah, that the more we know ourselves and the more we can
Mhm.
allow ourselves to be inspired by this astounding planet,
Mhm.
the more we have to shine back out.
And
That's
it's
wonderful.
infectious too. The more you are like beaming, and it impacts me, and the more I beam and feel that well-being, and it's infectious. Like, and there's science around that as well, that it is infectious.
Yeah, I just love how you infuse so much of what's happening in the scientific world with what you're doing. I know you talk a lot about awe, and awe is, I think, one of my favorite parts of existing. I mean, it is just that sense of transcendence, that ability to feel the magnificence of being alive. And you can travel all the way to Paris and have that experience, but you can also have it in your garden, in your
Yes.
yard. And I love that you have that experience frequently, but that you have tools to help other people cultivate that in their lives and in their minds.
I do, and I'm right where there with you. That's probably one of my favorite parts of science that I have unearthed and kind of dove deep into, and the fact that awe can be so mysterious. There's not one cookie cutter way to experience awe as well, and there's all sorts of tools that we can develop to open ourselves and develop that muscle of experiencing more often in big ways and in little ways is phenomenal. And so, yes, I'm all constantly experimenting and sharing ideas of how to do that because that's probably the feeling, even from way back when I first started as a child moving to a new place. It's that, like, wow, like I had no idea and like I don't understand, but this feels really interesting. I think that is has been a constant and will continue to be a foundation of what my messages kind of and my tools
Yeah.
surround around as well.
Yeah, I was just reading an article last night. It was talking about, the big five personality traits that they've identified. And one that they were talking about was openness,
Right.
openness to new experiences, and how that one is something that we can cultivate in our
Yes.
own lives, and that one actually has been shown to help people enhance their intelligence, and then you and I know it also enhances something much deeper, like this sense of gratitude, this sense of connection to the world. So
Mhm.
I love that that is something you help people do. Do you have any suggestions or day-to-day tips you might suggest that listeners can lean into to cultivate a lot more in their lives?
For sure. So I don't have a challenge right now, but I might bring it back. I had this
I hope you
challenge called an
do.
yeah, and, to help people go on awe ventures because I'm all about adventures and awe. So these are awe ventures, and in a nutshell, you can do it anywhere. You should do it everywhere. Basic ingredients are like slowing down, practicing noticing more. Nature is not the only way, but it certainly is an environment that kind of opens up the window, I guess, in terms of the ability to connect with awe. Follow your curiosity,
Mm.
and then also reflect with the steep sense of gratitude of what you've just experienced. And like as a package, like that is an adventure, right? It's
It's one of
it's
the greatest adventures, and it's all in our
absolutely.
mind.
And it can happen. Like out my door right now, there are some new blossoms that I could have an awe venture just focused on a new blossom in my garden. Or if I went to the beach and just watched and thought about the tide coming in and going out, and there's so many ways. But just the fact that there's so many ways doesn't matter. What matters is that people actually, practice them or try it out or implement it in their lives. Like you can have theories, but until it's actually implemented, it's not going to make a difference in your life. So
Yeah.
just those simple things of doing that every day builds your muscle. And then if you do go to wherever you go, those muscles are actually primed so that the awe that kind of comes a little more easily when you're suddenly at a castle or something like that,
Yes.
it's actually even more enhanced because you have already primed all those skills of noticing, of slowing down, and of being curious and full of gratitude. So
I am so grateful that you shared that. I often think of my mind as a garden, and
yeah.
that it requires constant tending. That we are hardwired to survive, so we're going to respond to things that are dangerous. Our mind is going to ponder how could I have done that differently? What should I have done? We have that natural fight or flight response, but if we tend the thoughts in our mind and strive to focus on the things that naturally induce awe or gratitude in our minds, we can grow like this astounding array of beauty in our minds. And it's not like a Pollyanna-ish
Yeah.
denying the suffering and
No.
hardship in the world. It's choosing what to focus on and then how you're going to respond. And I think with a well tended mind, then you can also travel and be witness to challenges and suffering in the world or in your home or in your town, but that you are equipped to
Right.
to do something about it instead of like when we were talking earlier and you were talking about putting the oxygen mask on first. If we are in that constant state of fight or flight, we don't get to necessarily make the best choices about how to help in our community. But when we are centered in our minds and appreciate how astounding it is to be alive, then we really can act with intention and often much greater ability to impact change.
Absolutely. That's why we're friends. We must, because we think alike there, Erica. Beautifully said. And I agree. I will emphasize that, I guess, defense against being Pollyannish, because I think that is kind of maybe a critique that perhaps I have received sometimes about enthusiasm and optimism and that kind of thing. But it's not being Pollyannish. It's about kind of building our a positive capacity so that we can, and without denying all the hard stuff that's going on, so that we are in a better place to kind of deal with it all.
It is so wonderful to get to talk with you about all these things that I know you not only think deeply about, but help people build tools around and have in their lives. If there are any middle-aged women who are considering traveling solo and might not have done it before, do you have any tips for them?
I do, to consider it. Because the really, and to start by just kind of reading the compelling reasons why that it kind of should be on your radar. A relief that it doesn't have to look like the solo trips that you see on social media. It's your own journey. That's what's most important. And it provides a completely different perspective
Yeah.
than sometimes when we travel in other ways. So I created a little 14 days free email challenge for women who maybe have thought about it or are kind of thinking, or maybe interested in the
Mhm.
solo child, just to introduce some of the concepts, the research behind, why it might be something you might want to think about, how to practice at home, and how to overcome some of those barriers, and how to think about it in a way that you could maybe move forward towards a solo trip without it kind of totally pushing you away in terms of, oh no, that's not me, or oh, not a chance.
Uh,
So that's
that's
been fun.
That's awesome. And we will link to that in the show notes. And we will also link to the Venture Challenge if you bring that back.
Okay, I
I'll
will.
make sure that I add that in because I love that you did that before and think that it's something so helpful for all of us. But yeah, the 14-day challenge, helping women prepare for solo travel. I know you've got some things in there, both about mindset, but also some practical tools and all of that. So it's a super great resource.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And then, Tracy, you also offer travel coaching. Can you tell us a little bit about your coaching and your coaching packages?
Sure. I do some one-on-one coaching, and because travel is so varied, it really it depends on the person. And so I really like to connect with somebody to figure out what works. So I do have like a package of two, because it really helps to kind of
That's a nice
talk
way to
about
do it.
something, and then kind of I get to think about it, they get to think about it, and then we join back together, and then we could just determine if it's a longer term relationship, or if that kind of gets things where they need to be. I also have something called Ignite Your Inner Traveler. It's kind of a bit of a taster, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's you fill out a form, like a questionnaire with some key things, and I get to take it and think about it and analyze it, and then we get to meet. I get to go deeper into what I find interesting, and you get to talk, and then at the end you get a bit of a lookbook. So I create three different kinds of journeys that I think would really align with you. And it's not like you should do this. It's more like, here's my thought process of what really I hear a lot, like would really bring you joy. And then you can react to that and tailor it as you need. So that's been super fun.
Oh, that's such a great way to do it. And you're giving three different possibilities. And I would guess that each of those possibilities helps your client think about themselves in travel in different ways. And then they
Yeah,
can move
kind of like
forward.
3 little experiments.
I love it. I don't know if you know, but I used to be a high school science teacher. So all this focus on experiments and science has been wonderful.
Good.
And I think there is a lot of overlap and help in seeing it that way. You've given us a lot of inspiration for our own travels. For people who are interested in traveling like this themselves, do you have one simple step that people could implement this week?
This week, well, would be to go on an adventure,
Oh, I
I
love it.
think, and to practice those skills that are so fundamental for experiencing those feelings of awe or gratitude or just awareness that then also can be, packed in your suitcase with you as you go on a trip as well. And
Yeah.
so again, that's, slowing down, it's noticing, really observing. It's kind of leaning into your curiosity and then kind of reflecting about the whole thing with gratitude. So that's an adventure, and you could do that this week by going to a new place or going into your backyard and seeing somewhere you've always been with slightly different eyes. That it will boost your well-being, guaranteed.
Speaking from experience, I can definitely confirm that that is true and that it's such a great thing that you can carry with you into any future travels and life experiences. So that's wonderful. Thank you. And then we like to give our listeners a reflection on travel that they can dive deeper into on their own after the show. Do you have a favorite question that people might want to consider?
I do. I did think of a question, so I'm just going to read it here. What if the key to meaningful travel and a meaningful life starts with intentionally nurturing our own well-being?
Thank you, Tracy.
Something to
Wonderful.
ponder.
I love that. And I know we have listeners who are going to want to learn more about you and follow along with Travel Bug Tonic. Where can they find you and how can we follow along?
So I am most active with my community, which of subscribers, and I send an email out maybe 3 times a month, 3 to 4 times a month. And so you
Awesome.
can find, you can subscribe through my website, and that's also where all my resources and all my articles are. That's www.travelbugtonic.com.
Right below, yeah.
And I
Perfect.
am also variably active, if that's a right term, on social media because I also pay attention to my well-being in that regard. But I am at Travel Bug Tonic on Instagram, Facebook, as well as Pinterest.
And you post so many great things when you are active. And I
Yes, when I am.
appreciate and value the fact that you also take breaks from that for your own well-being. So that's wonderful. We will link to all of that below. And I encourage people to sign up for Tracy's newsletter. It's filled with great resources. Tracy, thank you so much for being here. I'm grateful for you, for your friendship, for what you bring to this space. And I know our listeners also got so much from today's conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. It's been a pleasure to connect again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. I know your time is valuable, and I'm truly grateful that you spent some of it here together. Please come visit me at tripscholars.com for free travel resources, workshops, and travel coaching. And if you enjoyed today's show, please follow, review, or share it. It really helps other curious travelers find us. Until next time, curious travelers.